Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back into a time where the air was thick with coal smoke and the streets of London were paved with more than just good intentions, mostly just horse manure and soot. Close your eyes and imagine the Victorian era. You probably pictured top hats, tea parties, and fancy gowns, but for you, the reality is much darker, literally. Because tonight, we're looking at why it absolutely sucked to be a Victorian chimney sweep. Honestly, looking at your current situation, you probably won't survive this journey, but at least you're listening to this from the safety of your blankets. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel while the rest of the world is asleep. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up, not to the sound of an alarm or the gentle chirping of birds, but to the sharp kick of a heavy boot against your ribs. It's 4 a.m. The air in the cellar is so thick with coal dust that you can't tell if your eyes are open or closed until you blink and feel the grit scratching against your corneas. This is your life. You aren't a student, a son, or even a person in the eyes of the law. You are a climbing boy, a human tool designed to navigate the narrow, suffocating arteries of London's chimneys. Your bed is a pile of soot-stained sacks in the corner of a damp basement, shared with 3 other boys whose coughs provide a rhythmic soundtrack to your short, restless sleep. You scramble to your feet, your joints aching with a cold that seems to have settled deep inside your bones. There is no breakfast, maybe a crust of bread if the master sweep is in a rare good mood, but usually you just tighten the twine around your waist and prepare for the walk. You follow the master into the London fog, a pea souper so thick you can barely see your own blackened hands in front of your face. The city is a ghost town at this hour, illuminated only by the flickering orange glow of gas lamps that struggle to pierce the mist. Every breath you take tastes like sulfur and damp stone. You carry the brushes, their stiff bristles scraping against your legs, and the heavy soot cloth draped over your shoulder like a shroud. You're only 6 years old, but you walk with the heavy, dragging gait of an old man. As you navigate the cobblestone streets, the master's shadow looms over you, a constant reminder of the apprenticeship your parents sold you into for the price of a few weeks of rent. Scholars still argue whether the Chimney Sweepers Act of 1788 was ever intended to be enforced, or if it was merely a political performance to quiet the growing abolitionist movement that was starting to look at the white slaves of England. For you, the law doesn't matter. What matters is the biting wind whipping off the Thames and the looming silhouette of the first mansion on the morning's list. You reach a grand townhouse in Mayfair. The servants are already stirring, their faces tight with a mix of pity and disgust as they usher you through the back entrance. You find yourself standing before a massive hearth. It's still warm from last night's fire, the embers glowing like angry eyes in the dark. The master doesn't wait for it to cool. He spreads the soot cloth, a heavy piece of fabric meant to catch the debris, but its primary purpose is to hide you from the view of the household. He barks an order, and you know what comes next. You strip off your tattered shirt, exposing a rib cage that sticks out like a bird's, covered in a patchwork of half-healed scrapes and permanent black stains. It's a mainstream historical fact that children as young as 4 were often recruited for this job because their frames were the only ones small enough to fit into the standard 9 by 9-inch chimney flues of the era. You look up into the dark throat of the chimney. It looks like a vertical tunnel to nowhere. The master hands you a small scraper and a hand brush. He doesn't offer a good luck or a be careful. Instead, he reminds you that if you aren't fast enough, there won't be any supper tonight. You step into the fireplace. The soot is soft and powdery under your bare feet, like stepping into black snow. You reach up, grabbing the first ledge of brickwork. The bricks are rough and jagged, coated in a thick layer of creosote, a sticky tar-like substance that smells like burnt chemicals. As you begin your ascent, you realize that your world is about to shrink down to a space no wider than your shoulders. You have to shimmy up using your knees and elbows, pressing your back against one wall and your limbs against the other. It's a rhythmic, agonizing crawl. An odd and quirky detail of the trade was that many masters would actually condition their boys' skin by soaking their raw, bleeding knees and elbows in strong brine and then holding them close to a hot fire to harden them. You can feel that hardened skin now, scraping against the soot-clogged bricks as you push yourself higher. Each movement sends a cascade of black dust down on your face. You learn to breathe through your nose, shallow and slow, but it's impossible to keep the soot out. It gets into your mouth, your ears, and behind your eyelids. The higher you go, the darker it gets. The light from the hearth below disappears, replaced by a suffocating, velvety blackness. You are alone in the wall. You can hear the muffled sounds of the house, a door slamming somewhere, a clock chiming, but they feel like they belong to a different planet. Up here, there is only the sound of your own labored breathing and the rhythmic shick, shick, shick of your scraper against the brick. You are a human piston in a machine made of brick and mortar, cleaning the filth of a civilization that refuses to look at you. You keep climbing, higher into the heat and the dark, wondering if this is the day the flue narrows just enough to hold you forever. You're wedged in that dark, narrow chimney flue now, but your mind drifts back to how you ended up in this soot-choked nightmare in the first place. You weren't always a climbing boy. Once you had a name that wasn't just a barked command from a master sweep. But in the Victorian era, poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's a predator that consumes the smallest and most vulnerable first. Your parents didn't sell you in the way people sell a horse or a cart. At least that's what they told themselves. They called it an apprenticeship. They signed a piece of paper, a legal indenture, that effectively handed over your childhood, your safety, and your lungs to a man who sees you as nothing more than a living, breathing brush. This transition from child to commodity is a recurring theme in the history of labor, much like the brutal realities explored in the Why It Sucked series on the Sleepless Historian channel, which details the harsh lives of workers throughout time. You quickly learned that the apprenticeship was a legal fiction. There were no lessons in reading or writing, no trade secrets shared over a warm hearth. The only thing you were taught was how to suffer in silence. The master sweep had a quota of chimneys to clear before the city fully woke up, and you were the instrument of his profit. If you hesitated at the mouth of a chimney, he didn't offer encouragement. He offered the reminder, a sharp poke with a long stick or a heavy cuff to the ear. An odd and quirky detail of this grim trade was that some master sweeps would actually intentionally underfeed their climbing boys to ensure they stayed thin enough for the flues. You feel that hunger now, a dull, gnawing ache in your stomach that never truly goes away. You're perpetually stunted. While other children your age are growing tall, your growth has been slowed by a lack of sunlight, a lack of calories, and the crushing physical pressure of the chimneys. You are a Tom Thumb of Victorian underworld, a miniature adult with a face permanently etched by soot and fatigue. You realize that your smallness, which should have been your protection, is actually your curse. As you push your back against the rough brickwork, scraping your way higher, you think about the legalities of your situation. Scholars still argue whether the 1834 Chimney Sweepers Act, which was supposed to raise the minimum age of apprentices to 10, was actually a failure because it lacked any real mechanism for enforcement. In the sprawling, chaotic maze of London, no one was checking birth certificates in the soot-stained cellars. You know you're not 10. You might be 7, maybe 8, but in the eyes of the law, you are invisible. The master tells the beetles you're his nephew, or he simply moves you to a different district when the heat gets too high. The master shop, if you can even call it that, is your new home. It's a cellar filled with the tools of the trade, long rods, heavy brushes, and these soot bags that serve as both your workspace and your bed. You spend your nights huddling for warmth with the other boys, sharing the black blankets, the sacks to collect the soot. The soot gets into everything. It's in the water you drink, the meager scraps of bread you eat, and it's permanently tattooed into the pores of your skin. You've forgotten what the color of your own flesh looks like. You are a creature of the dark, a shadow that moves through the city's heights while the respectable folks sleep in their clean white sheets. You recall the first time you tried to run away. You didn't get far. The streets were a labyrinth, and your blackened face made you stand out like a beacon to the constables. They didn't see a victim, they saw a vagrant, a potential thief. They returned you to the master, who made sure you wouldn't try it again. The discipline was swift and left you with a limp that makes climbing even more of a chore. You realize that there is no escape. The brick walls press against your chest and back so tightly that you can feel the rhythmic thrum of your own heart echoing off the masonry. This is the moment where the adventure of your apprenticeship becomes a terrifying reality. You are now fully inside the flue, and the light from the room below has been swallowed by a thick, velvety curtain of soot. It's a claustrophobic nightmare. Every time you exhale, the space seems to shrink, the rough edges of the chimney bricks catching on your skin, reminding you that there is only one way to go, up. You reach up with your scraper, the cold iron heavy in your small hand. Your elbows are tucked in tight, your knees drawn up toward your chin in a perpetual, agonizing crouch. This isn't just a climb, it's a test of physical endurance that most adults wouldn't survive for 5 minutes. But you are a child, and your bones are still soft enough to be compressed. It is a mainstream historical fact that the standard Victorian chimney flue was a mere 9 by 9 inches square, and if a boy folded his knees too far, he could become wedged so tightly that he would suffocate before he could be reached. You try not to think about that as you find a small crack in the mortar with your toes and push. The air is thin and hot. Even though the fire was supposedly extinguished, the bricks retain a punishing heat that makes the sweat pour off your brow, creating muddy tracks through the soot on your face. You can hear the master's voice from the bottom of the stack. It's muffled, distorted by the narrow tunnel, sounding more like a growl than a man. He's telling you to hurry. He doesn't care that your lungs are burning or that the skin on your back is being shredded by the jagged edges of the chimney. If you stop, he has ways of making you move. An odd and horrific detail of this trade was that some masters would light a small bundle of straw in the fireplace beneath a hesitant boy to encourage him to climb faster. They called it lighting a fire under him, a phrase we use today with much less literal stakes. You feel a sudden waft of warmth that isn't just residual heat. The panic flares in your chest, sharper than the soot cough. You scramble higher, your movements becoming frantic. The scraper clatters against the brick, sending a shower of grit into your eyes. You can't rub them, you can't move your arms that way. You just have to blink through the stinging tears and keep pushing. As you wedge yourself higher, your body begins to ache in a way that feels permanent. You are developing what the older sweeps call the climbing boy's slouch. Your spine is beginning to curve, your knees are starting to bow outward, and your chest is becoming hollowed out from the constant pressure of the climb. You can feel your body changing, adapting to the chimney in a way that makes you less and less fit for the world outside of it. You are becoming a creature of the brickwork. The soot is everywhere. It's not just a coating, it's a living thing. It fills your nostrils, making every breath a struggle against a dry, powdery obstruction. You've learned the hard way not to open your mouth to gasp for air, or you'll end up choking on a mouthful of bitter, carbonized dust. There is no sound here except your own breathing and the scraping of iron against brick. You encounter a bend in the chimney. These are the most dangerous parts. The flue turns at a sharp angle to bypass a floor joist or another fireplace's vent. Here, you have to twist your body in a way that feels like it might snap your ribs. You have to navigate the corner blindly,
feeling for the exit with your head and shoulders while your legs are still stuck in the vertical shaft below. For a second, you get stuck. Your shoulder wedges against a protruding brick. The panic returns, a cold spike through your gut. You're trapped in the dark, brick pressing from all sides, with heat rising beneath you and nowhere to go. You take a shallow, trembling breath and shift your weight, exhaling until your chest is as small as it can be. With a sickening scrape, you slide past the obstruction. You're moving again, but the bend has taken its toll. You've left a patch of skin behind on the brick, and the raw wound stings as the soot settles into it. You don't cry out. There's no point. No one would hear you through the thick walls anyway. So you keep scraping, keep climbing, driven by the primal need to reach that tiny patch of light at the top of the world. You are a shadow in the heart of the house, a secret shame hidden behind expensive wallpaper and fine oil paintings. The darkness presses in, but you push back, 1 inch at a time, telling yourself the same thing over and over. You are almost there.
You're back on the ground for a brief moment, the soot cloth spread out like a dark, dusty picnic blanket in the master's yard. You think the hard part is over because you've reached the top of that one stack, but the training has only just begun. This isn't a school where you learn your ABCs. It's a school of hard knocks, quite literally. If you thought the climb was bad, the physical conditioning is where the true horror of being a Victorian chimney sweep lies. It's a process designed to turn your soft, childlike skin into leather, a necessity for a trade that involves scraping your body against a brace of brickwork for hours on end. The master looks at your knees. They are raw, the skin worn away to the quick, weeping a mixture of blood and clear fluid. He doesn't offer a bandage or a soothing ointment. Instead, he pulls out a bucket of strong, stinging brine, salt water so concentrated it could preserve a side of beef. He tells you to sit. He takes a rough sponge, dips it into the brine, and begins to scrub your open wounds. The pain is white hot, a jagged lightning bolt that shoots from your joints straight to your brain. You want to scream, but you've learned that screaming only brings the strap. He tells you this is mercy. By irritating the wounds and then drying them out, he is forcing your body to produce thick, calloused scabs. These aren't just scabs, they are your armor. Without them, you would bleed out inside a chimney within a week. It is a mainstream historical fact that many climbing boys suffered from permanent joint deformities and chronic inflammation due to this brutal hardening process. Your knees and elbows become oversized, knobby protrusions of scar tissue, making you look like a strange skeletal insect. While you sit there, trembling from the salt sting, the master explains that your skin needs to be as tough as a boot sole. This is the Victorian version of a safety protocol. It's a twisted logic where the solution to a dangerous environment isn't to change the environment, but to reshape the worker until they can survive it. An odd and unsettling detail of this conditioning was that some masters would actually make the boys kneel on bags of sharp sand while they worked on other tasks, just to ensure the skin on their knees stayed thick and insensitive. You spend your downtime, if you can call it that, performing menial chores in a state of constant physical irritation. You're never truly off. Even when you aren't in a flu, your body is being prepared for the next one. The salt soaks happen every night after work. You learn to dread the bucket more than the dark. You start to lose sensation in your extremities. Your fingertips become numb, the fine motor skills of a child replaced by the blunt, calloused grip of a laborer. Scholars still argue whether the 1840 Chimney Sweepers and Chimneys Regulation Act was effectively ignored for decades, because the very people meant to enforce it, the local magistrates, often employed climbing boys themselves to clean their own sprawling estates. There's a bitter irony in that. The men who sat in cushioned chairs debating your welfare were the same ones who wouldn't dream of letting a mechanical brush touch their expensive, intricate flues. They preferred the thoroughness of a human child, regardless of the law. You are caught in a gap between the enlightenment of the age and its inherent greed. The soot becomes a permanent part of you during this time. Because the salt soaks take up your cleaning time, and because soap is a luxury the master won't waste on you, you rarely wash your whole body. The soot settles into the cracks of your new, leathery skin. It gets into your hair, turning it into a matted, stiff cap of carbon. You become a chimney sweep in your soul, the blackness sinking deeper than just the surface. You aren't just the boy who cleans chimneys, you are becoming a piece of the chimney itself. You watch the other boys in the yard, the ones who have been doing this for a year or more. They move with a strange, stiff-legged gait. Their skin is a dull, grayish black that never seems to come clean, even in the rain. They don't talk much. The hardening isn't just for the skin, it's for the mind, too. You learn to shut out the pain, to retreat into a small, quiet corner of your brain where the sting fades and the master's voice becomes a distant hum. This endurance keeps you going, but it also separates you from the world outside. You see other children in the street, clean, well-dressed, and they look like a different species. They point and whisper, and you realize that your armor of scar tissue has made you an outsider in your own city. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the soot-stained yard, the master puts away the brine bucket. He gives you a kick toward the cellar. "No dinner today," he says, because you flinched during the soaking. You crawl onto your soot-bag bed, your knees throbbing with a slow, pulsing heat. You try to find a position that doesn't hurt, but it's impossible. You are a Victorian climbing boy, and your body is no longer your own. It is a tool being shaped day by day in a world that demands more from you than you can ever give. You close your eyes, the smell of salt and coal dust filling your senses, wondering if tomorrow's chimney will be narrower than today's. Stay with me, because the journey into the dark is only getting deeper.